So I wasn't expecting it, and the question is, why did they do it? And I would assume that's what we're going to talk about, definitely. And I, also want to ask, this letter said, they want to withdraw it without prejudice. Why is that part important? Well, without prejudice just means they could bring it again, so you can either withdraw a motion with prejudice, which means it's resolved and we can't bring it again, or without prejudice, which means the court doesn't have to deal with this. Now, but we're not waiving our rights. We're going to save the right to bring the motion again at a later time. And as you just mentioned before, I guess we're going to get into, why was this move even done in the first place? Now, Jay-Z's lawyer was previously scolded by that same judge for using inflammatory language against Tony Buzbee. But do you think that this, I say, part of a new strategy not to be harsh on the Jane, do lawyer instead hope to just get this suit dismissed instead? Possibly. So that first thing you mentioned about the judge's reaction, I have 3 theories about why this was withdrawn, and the first one is exactly what you said. The judge has already indicated on the record that she's not thrilled with the way the attorneys are going at each other in this, and no judge wants to make a case about conflict between the lawyers. Lawyers end up skirmishing all the time, they don't like each other all the time, they accuse each other of bad stuff all the time, and no judge wants the case to be about that. The judge wants the case to be about the merits, about the claims, about the parties, not about the lawyers. So she shed rest down the lawyers at one point about this kind of activity, and it's possible that they have withdrawn the motion because they just don't think the judge is going to really consider. Given her predisposition, that's one possibility, and what's your other possibility? Well, I have 2 other possibilities, and there could be a mix of the 3. The second possibility that occurred to me is for some reason the people who brought the motion, and that's the Quinn Emanuel firm, no longer think the motion is that strong. It's possible they've evaluated things. It's possible, they were claiming that the pups didn't vet the claims enough and made representations in the complaint that could not have been true, and maybe with further analysis they've come to a view that the allegations and the complaint are not so demonstrably false that you could prevail on a motion for sanctions. Remember, a motion for sanctions is really hard to win on. They're very infrequently granted, especially in a contentious case like this, so I wouldn't have expected it to be granted anyway. So the second possibility is that Quinn Emanuel just decided it's not the best motion, it's not our best, we have a separate motion to dismiss the complaint against our client. That's the motion that we want to see through, that's the motion we want the judge to focus on. We want her to focus on the merits and dismiss the claims against our client. We don't care about the sanction stuff, we're going to get it. Go in my third theory, which I have no basis for other than sheer speculation. I want to say that UPF front is that there's some kind of deal here between the lawyers. The lawyers have accused each other, right? Buzbee is accused Quinn Emanuel of going after his clients and trying to get them to bring malpractice cases. Quinn Emanuel's gone after Buzbee and accused him of trying to drum up clients to bring claims against Combs and against Jay-Z. And maybe the attorneys have reached some sort of understanding about the ground rules, maybe not, but maybe they have, and letting this motion go is part of that understanding. That would be my third possible reason. Yeah, and I know you mentioned that it's speculation, but I think, by you kind of explaining that, I feel like that might also be very plausible. I want to go back to what you said during kind of your second explanation where, I'm sure Jay-Z from his side, he probably wants this lawsuit just to be, or this complaint to be dismissed, or not even amended in the first place, made in the first place. Obviously nothing goes away in the blink of an eye, excuse me, but in your opinion, watching all of this legal back and forth that's been unfolding these past few months, do you think there is enough to dismiss, or do you think at a point this will even get litigated? I think it's going to get litigated if I had to guess. I haven't really studied the complaint against the motion to dismiss, so I don't have a advanced opinion about it, but my reaction to it is that the complaint accuses him of some very bad stuff, and that ought to be enough to move the case forward. That's my guess. Now remember, at the outset of these litigations, we go through kind of a honing phase where the dispute is sort of narrowed down to certain parties and certain claims. And sometimes the motion to dismiss doesn't get rid of the case entirely, but it gets rid of some of the... It's a big week for Jay-Z. His Rock Nation is geared up to produce the most-watched live performance of the year, the Super Bowl halftime show. And of course, he was there to cheer on his wife, who took home the coveted award of Album of the Year at this year's Grammys. So in light of all of that, he's also making a surprising move in his ongoing back and forth with Tony Buzbee. Now at this point, we all know who the Texas-based attorney is. You know, the same one who said that he had more than 100 accusers ready to file lawsuits against Diddy. After vetting, we now represent 120 individuals who intend to bring civil claims in civil court against Sean Diddy Combezes, well as claims against many other individuals and entities that we will name as defendants as we file these individual cases. And of course, we know later that Jane Doe, who is being represented by the Texas attorney Phillida, sued a couple weeks after this press conference, accusing Diddy of raping her when she was just 13 years old, then amended that complaint weeks later, adding Jay-Z, Shan Carter's name to that child rape lawsuit. Alongside Diddy, a female celebrity was also mentioned in that complaint as well. However, her identity has since remained a mystery since that happened. First, let me say both Sha Combs and Sean Carter have denied those accusations. Diddy's team said, quote, in court, "The truth will prevail that Mr. Combs never sexually assaulted or trafficked anyone, man or woman, adult or minor." Meanwhile, Jay-Z made a scathing statement of denial, mainly targeting Tony Buzbee. He said in part, quote, "My lawyer received a blackmail attempt called a demand letter from a lawyer named Tony Buzbee. What he'd calculated was the nature of these allegations and the public scrutiny would make me want to settle. No, sir, it had the opposite effect. It made me want to expose you for the fraud you are in Avery public fashion, so no, I will not give you one red penny." Now that statement went on to call Tony Buzbee a deplorable human, a man with no valor, a hand, an ambulance chaser, in a cheap suit now, while Diddy sits in a jail cell awaiting trial. By the way, pleaded not guilty to those charges, denies all the accusations made in the various lawsuits. Jay-Z and Tony Buzbee have been going back and forth with lots of motions filed, complaints filed, and accusations flying on both ends. The Jane Doe alleging she was raped by Diddy and Jay-Z went on NBC, where they pointed out consistencies in her account of what happened, including that her father picked her up after the alleged rape. Her father later told NBC he didn't recall that she claimed she spoke to a celebrity there, but that celeb wasn't even in New York at that time, and photos showed Diddy and Jay-Z at different locations than the Jane Doe described. Now that interview happened in mid-December. By the end of that month, Jay-Z sued Buzbee for death and extortion. Jay-Z's legal team has also been pushing for the Jane Doe to not hide under anonymity, and of course Jay-Z's lawyers have been trying to get this name off that child rape lawsuit, or just have it dismissed altogether. Now a judge ruled that she can proceed anonymously for now, but scolded Jay-Z's attorneys for their combative motions and inflammatory language used against Tony Buzbee. Then in January, a legal petition was filed by a Texas man who is represented by Tony Buzbee, who also accused Jay-Z's lawyers of bribing people to sue Buzbee and his law firm. So a lot's happened now. In a surprising move, Jay-Z's lawyer, Alex Spiro, is seemingly softening up on Buzbee in a letter to Judge Annalisa Torres, the same one who previously scolded him. Spiro wrote, quote, "Dear Judge Torres, we write, on behalf of defendant Shan Carter, to respectfully request that Mr. Carter's motion for sanctions pursuit it to federal. Rule of Civil Procedure 11, be withdrawn at this time without prejudice. We have discussed this matter with counsel for plaintiff, who consents to this submission and agrees the withdrawal is without prejudice, and that motion was terminated. So what does it mean? Well, last month, Jay-Z's lawyer asked the court to impose sanctions against Buzbee for allegedly failing to do a reasonable investigation before filing the rape allegations against him. Jay-Z's lawyer even pointed out that Buzbee admitted to not even meeting Jane Doe before he signed off on her complaint, but Buzbee maintains the case was appropriately vetted. So while the move from Jay-Z's lawyers was surprising, it might also be a part of their strategy. At this time, neither Jay-Z, his legal team, or Tony Buzbee have publicly responded to this surprising move, but it's likely not the end of this ongoing legal saga, and we could hear more very soon. Let's unpack this further with attorney and litigator Richenstein. Richerways, great to see you. What's your reaction to this move done by Jay-Z's lawyer Alex Spiro? Are you surprised that they asked the judge to drop the motion for sanctioning Tony Buzbee? Well, I'm a little bit surprised, because, asking for sanctions is a pretty aggressive move, and so to turn around and withdraw that motion is a notable retreat from that move. So